everyone to have your seats. If you could kindly fill up the seats at the front first, and in a couple minutes, we will start our program.
Social amenities, Lord, heaven knows. Opportunities, well, them always close. Can't get work once it's white collar. So if you can't stretch your dollar, it's later for the crack or smoke your pipe. You're short or dead from pride. Life does rip dignity and pride. Till there's only bitterness left inside. And every day is a hustle. Arguments are settled with muscle. Till you're 6 feet deep by 3 feet wide. Children to life keep on drifting. It's something they're smoking or sniffing. Or maybe they're trying to forget this life of misery and regret. No one to come to their rescue except Capleton and Boodhu. So they boom boxes, there they go. The drum of voices from the ghetto. Voices from the ghetto.
Poverty is hell, and the angels are in paradise, driving in their limousine, where everything is nice and clean. A poor man living in a teeny-weeny hut, children hungry, nothing in the pot. He gone by the neighbor to beg for some rice. The neighbor under pressure, boy, things ain't nice. He gone in the big shot area to beg. A police put a bullet in the teeny-weeny leg. He gone in the courts and he lost the case. The prosecutor say he have a bandit face. Poverty is hell. Poverty is hell. Wake up in the morning and the baby cry. The sugar pan empty, the milk bottle dry. The little boy died on the mango tree. The mango green, butting up his belly. The young girl falling, she wouldn't settle. She white, she bumsy with stinning nettle. Toilet paper, they never had. They used to tutu in the gully by the old backyard. They rub she down and they put she to sleep. The rain come down and the house does leak. Poverty is hell. Poverty is hell. A poor man always dream another dream. He happy like a puppy when he dream another dream. He dream that he have a new roof on the hut. He dream that he have some food in the pot. He dream that he have a rich friend named Frank. He dream that he have a lot of cash in the bank. He dream that he pay all his bills for the month. He dream that he have a new car in the front. He dream that he have to go to a vet. He dream that his pocket have a big fat toilet. He wake up in the night and he rush for his pants. All he found in the pocket was a whole lot of ants. Poverty is hell. Poverty is hell. No, 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 yeah. Ten little children for dumpling. Mommy got to slice them 10, 10, 10. A piece for a boy and a piece for a girl. A piece for the neighbor daughter mud. The cat in the corner looking to bed. Little the corner pick him in the leg. Go in the room and look for a rat. The rat in the roof he know about cat. Now the cat see a chicky chung, yeah, yeah. He rush for the chicky chung. But the poor little chicky chung flew away like a chicky chung. Then cockroach gone in the condensed milk. Mama get vexed for she
Ladies
condensed milk.
and gentlemen,
Who leave the condensed
may I have your attention, please? May I ask you all to please stand at attention for the national anthem.
Forged from the love of liberty, with the voice of hope and love, with boundless faith in our destiny, we solemnly declare. Side by side we stand,
And ladies and gentlemen, may I ask that you continue to remain standing because almost on cue, can we please give a round of applause to welcome the political leader of the People's National Movement and the leader of the opposition, the Honourable Penelope Beckles Robinson.
And she look innocent, but she know what she doing. It's not the pot or the fire, but the seasoning she put in. She have the body, hiya, hiya, hiya. Good Lord, Miss Lady, hiya, hiya, hiya.
Welcome, political leader. And ladies and gentlemen, may I ask you all to please remain standing as we invite to the podium Mr. Travis Williams to commence with a prayer.
Very good evening to our political leader, our very beloved political leader, to her husband, all our other members of parliament, senators, the chairman of the Tunapuna Piako Regional Corporation, the chairman of the San Juan Laventel Regional Corporation, all other aldermen, councillors, other distinguished guests, and to all of you lovely ladies and gentlemen. Let us bow our heads in prayer. Heavenly Father, we come before you today with humble hearts, acknowledging that all wisdom, authority, and guidance comes from you. We lift our political party and all its leaders, members, and supporters into your hands. As they take on the responsibility of leadership and service, we ask that you guide their thoughts, words, and actions. Grant them wisdom beyond their own understanding. Help them to seek truth, fairness, and justice in every decision they make. May they be driven by a genuine commitment to service of the people with honesty, humility, and compassion. Lord, place in their hearts a deep sense of responsibility for this nation and for every citizen they represent. Help them to remember that leadership comes from God. Help them to remember that it is about service, sacrifice, and dedication to the common good. Strengthen them to stand firm for what is right, even when it is difficult or unpopular, and to stand in defense of this nation. We pray that you will unite them with a spirit of cooperation, respect, and understanding. Fill them with patience and a willingness to listen to one another. Help them to work to find the solutions that will bring peace, progress, and stability to our country. Surround them with your wise counsel as a people who will speak truth with courage. Keep their hearts grounded in integrity and their minds focused on the welfare of our party and nation. We also pray for unity among the people of this land, Father. In the times when politics can drive communities apart, remind everyone that we are one people with a shared future. Help this party to lead in a way that builds bridges instead of walls and encourage respect among all citizens, especially in the face of a government bent on destroying the social, economic, and political fabric of this land. Give them strength, Lord. Give strength to our PNM caucus during times of crisis, pressure, and challenge. When they feel uncertain, grant them the clarity. When they feel weary, renew their strength. When they face difficult choices, remind them to seek your guidance first. We place their plans, their campaigns, and all their good works and their leadership into your hands. Lead them in the path of righteousness and wisdom. May everything they do be ultimately done to your peace, your justice, and your prosperity for all. In your holy name we pray. Amen.
Thank you, Travis Williams. Ladies and gentlemen, you may have your seats. A special good evening to each and every one of you, and it is really a pleasure to be here in Tunapuna in the heart of the East-West Corridor in Trinidad and Tobago for this town hall meeting hosted by the People's National Movement on the state of emergency. Ladies and gentlemen, let me firstly recognize the Honourable Penelope Beckles Robinson, political leader of the People's National Movement and the leader of the opposition, as well as Member of Parliament for Arima. On his way, the Honourable Marvin Gonzalez, Chairman of the People's National Movement and Member of Parliament for Aruca Lopino. I see a number of other MPs here as well too. Let me recognize MP Simon de Norbrega, MP for Diego Martin Central. I see the Member of Parliament for Malabar Mausaka, the Honourable Dominic Romain. Allow me to also recognize Deputy Political Leader of the PNM, Mr. Sanjiv Boodhu. And I know we also have Senator Janelle John Bates. And I've seen Senator Vishnu Danpal somewhere here. I know Vishnu usually likes to keep a background view. All party officers, including deputy political leaders, the chairman of the Tunapuna Piako Regional Corporation, Councillor Josiah Austin, and all members of council, other members of parliament, senators, heads of local government corporations, specially invited guests, ladies and gentlemen, members of the media, and those viewing and listening live this evening, a very good evening to you. And welcome, as I said, to this town hall meeting hosted by the People's National Movement. Of course, the topic of this town hall meeting is the current state of emergency and Emergency Powers Regulations 2026. And of course, we will hear a lot about that through our panel discussion and from you, the members of the public. My name is Viyash Nandlal, and I will be the moderator for this evening's proceedings. 1 year ago, ladies and gentlemen, this country was in a state of emergency. Since then, 2 more state of emergencies have been declared, with the latest only being announced less than a week ago. Meanwhile, citizens are asking pertinent questions and wondering whether we are to exist in a perpetual state of emergency. Many require clarity, and others have expressed serious concerns about fundamental rights and freedoms being infringed upon. Of course, as we know, crime is an issue that affects us all, and the solution, many agree, cannot be a continuous granting of extraordinary powers by the government. Our town hall meeting and conversation here today is designed to provide a forum for you, the members of the public, and for you from Tunapuna and environs along the East-West Corridor and other parts of Trinidad and Tobago, to firstly become more informed on this state of emergency and what it means for you and how it impacts you. Secondly, it gives the PNM and especially its parliamentarians who are there advocating on your behalf, legislating on your behalf, it gives them the opportunity to hear your views on this matter and allow you the chance to ask questions and provide comments on your views so we can all be better informed in this two-way communication. We thank the PNM for affording this opportunity to be better informed, express our views on the serious matter that's affecting everyone in our national community. Today's program will commence with welcoming remarks by the chairman of the Tunapuna Piako Regional Corporation. Then we will go straight into our panel discussion, where we will invite our esteemed panel on the stage, and we will ask them all to give opening remarks. We will then have the featured opening remark by the political leader of the PNM and the leader of the opposition, the Honourable Penelope Beckles Robinson. A brief discussion will then take place, and we will then invite the members of public to ask questions, to offer your views, and to bring your concerns and comments to the forefront. So, ladies and gentlemen, we thank you for participating in today's town hall meeting on the state of emergency. And without further delay, let me go straight into our program. And to bring welcoming remarks, it's someone who is no stranger to you all here in Tunapuna. It's no stranger to myself. He is a community leader, an entrepreneur, and former professional footballer who currently serves as chairman of the Tunapuna Piako Regional Corporation and the local government representative for Makoya, Trin City. A native of Trin City, he holds a BSc in Politics and Policy from Liberty University, with a background that spans public service, parliamentary research, athletics, and youth development initiatives such as the Trin City Community Cup. Austin has built a reputation for leadership, or I should say Chairman Austin has built a reputation for leadership, community engagement, and a strong commitment to service and national development. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming to the podium to bring welcoming remarks here in Tunapuna, the chairman of the Tunapuna Piako Regional Corporation, Councillor Josiah Austin.
Permit me to recognize Mrs. Penelope Beckles Robinson, political leader of the People's National Movement, member of Parliament for Arima, and opposition leader of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, Mr. Robinson, our distinguished and diverse panel, officers of the movement, members of Parliament, my local government colleagues, residents of Tunapuna, burgesses of Tunapuna Piako, members of the media, members of the national community joining us online, brothers and sisters of the People's National Movement, good evening. As chairman of the Tunapuna Piako region, it is my honor and privilege to welcome you to this very important town hall meeting here at the Tunapuna Community Center. Town hall meetings are one of the most important traditions in any healthy democracy. They provide the space where citizens can come together, ask questions, share perspectives, and engage directly with those who represent them. Democracy is not just something that happens only on election day. It lives and breathes in gatherings like this one, where the voice of the people is heard. Tonight's discussion on the Emergency Powers Regulations 2026 could not be more timely or more important. While every responsible government must take steps to ensure the safety and security of its citizens, it must also ensure that such measures respect the fundamental rights and freedoms that defines us as a democratic society. History teaches us that whenever extraordinary powers are granted to a state, there must also be extraordinary vigilance. This is not about politics alone. It is about principle. It is about ensuring that in our efforts to maintain law and order, we do not undermine the very freedoms that make Trinidad and Tobago the proud nation it is. At every moment like these, citizens must remain informed, engaged, and united. Regardless of the background, community, or political persuasion, we must all share a common commitment that the rule of law prevails, that justice is balanced with liberty, and that the voices of our citizens continue to matter. This evening, we are fortunate to have with us a distinguished panel that will help unpack the legal, social, and constitutional implications of these regulations and guide a meaningful national conversation on the way forward. I encourage everyone present and those watching online to listen carefully, participate respectfully, and leave here better informed about the issues that affect all of us. Together, let us continue to defend the democratic values that generations before us fought to secure and ensure that those freedoms remain strong for generations to come. Thank you for joining us, and I look forward to a productive and enlightening discussion. God bless.
Thank you, Chairman Austin, for bringing such thought-provoking welcoming remarks. And I'm sure it would put us in this mood to be able to engage in the discussion that we are about to embark upon. Ladies and gentlemen, we move straight into the panel discussion element of our program here today. And we certainly have a very distinguished, a very esteemed panel to present the information to you, to bring clarity on any questions that you may have, and to really bring the facts and the information that seems to be lacking in the public space when we are dealing with national issues such as this. We have 4 members here who will take their seats, will bring opening remarks, and after the remarks from the political leader, we will engage in a discussion with you, members of the public. So I would like to commence inviting the individual members of this panel to the stage and to take their seats. And I will begin with someone who it is my pleasure to introduce, a very distinguished legal mind and a very respected voice at the bar, with decades of experience in constitutional and public law. He has consistently championed the rule of law and justice in our society. His keen insights and legal expertise will ground our discussion in the constitutional and legislative framework that governs this important national issue of state of emergency, emergency powers regulations. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming to the stage and to the panel Mr. Lalla, Senior Counsel. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure again to introduce another distinguished legal mind who has found her way in the halls of the upper house, advocating on your behalf on a very regular basis. Our next panelist is a distinguished barrister and attorney at law with a career spanning across civil, criminal, and family law. She's a dedicated legal practitioner who combines academic excellence with practical expertise, holding a master's degree with law with a distinction. Beyond her practice, she's also a trained mediator, having brought her skills to important institutions such as Family Court and the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions, where she worked to ensure justice, fairness, and resolution in some of the most sensitive matters in the country. Her breadth of experience and commitment to justice make her a valuable voice on this panel. Please join me, ladies and gentlemen, as we welcome Senator Janelle John Bates. Welcome, Senator Bates. And again, ladies and gentlemen, another distinguished and accomplished legal mind. Our other member of the panel is an accomplished attorney, public servant, and legislator with decades of experience in law and public life. Admitted to the bar in Trinidad and Tobago in 1996, he has built a distinguished legal career and was appointed senior counsel. He currently serves as the Member of Parliament for Port of Spain South and previously served as Minister in the Ministry of National Security, where he was involved in advancing policies and initiatives aimed at strengthening national security. A committed advocate for his constituents, he has consistently championed community development, youth empowerment, and expanded opportunities for training, employment, and economic advancement for the people of Port of Spain South. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our distinguished panelists, the Member of Parliament for Port of Spain South, the Honourable Keith Scotland, Senior Counsel. How are you doing? Please have a seat. And last, but certainly not least, ladies and gentlemen, a deputy political leader of the People's National Movement. We welcome an attorney at law and a dedicated servant of the people and advocate for progressive policies. He brings both legal expertise and a deep understanding of governance to the table. His perspective on how this legislation intersects with national priorities and the lived realities of citizens will bring invaluable insight to this conversation and certainly enrich it for both you and the wider public of Trinidad and Tobago. Please, ladies and gentlemen, let us invite to the panel Mr. Sanjiv Boodhu. Welcome to the panel, Mr. Boodhu, and let me take the time to recognize the Honourable Nyan Gatsby Dolly, Member of Parliament for St. Anne's East, and Lady Vice Chair of the People's National Movement. So, ladies and gentlemen, we have your distinguished panel here who have come together, taken their time, and they are about to present to you the information. And I will commence by just asking each panel member to bring some opening remarks on this state of emergency. And of course, as I said, we've had quite a few state of emergencies in this country. And to position where we currently are, these emergency regulations 2026, and to bring clarity and insight to you, the members of the public who are here today and listening and viewing live. Ladies and gentlemen, may I first start with... You have the mic? So let me first start with Mr. Scotland. If you could grace us with some opening comments and some insight into the state of emergency and especially the emergency regulations 2026.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. People tend to say that our political leader, she's too quiet. They're not hearing from her. But I want to tell you all that we have a political leader with depth. She isn't the loudest. She doesn't like a lot of long talk. And we had a 3-minute conference on the regulations today. And she made a point to me that is the most salient point in these regulations. These regulations almost mirror the regulations implemented under the People's National Movement in 2024 December. The only difference is that at Regulation 11 it says public order, and their Regulation 11, it's a big difference, says public safety. But do you know what is the difference between those regulations and now? One, it's the third time within a span of 10 months that they've brought back these draconian measures. That's the first thing. The PNM did it once. But here's the real nub. Under whose watch these regulations which infringe your rights come under? We were in Parliament this afternoon. We were about to debate a very serious, continue the debate on a very serious motion. We had speakers lined up, and for the first time in our democratic history, a standing order was used to silence private members, meaning your opposition, from speaking on that motion. And that motion was really a referendum on the performance of this government. So what we say to you, Trinidad and Tobago, is that when you have a government who is willing to act in a way that is undemocratic, and on top of that, you give them extraordinary powers, not once, not twice, but 3 times, you have to be very careful, you have to be very vigilant. I was saying to myself today, as I was about to speak, I felt like Helen on the March Gras Carnival Sunday night. These are my opening remarks.
Thank you, MP Scotland. I will now invite Mr. Larry Lalla, Senior Counsel, to bring some opening remarks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And please allow me to stand and adopt and stand on the protocols established by our chairman. Good evening to my PNM family. And good evening to our honorable political leader who continues to lead the fight against this wicked, incompetent, and from what we saw today, oppressive UNC government. Good evening to my hometown, Tunapuna. You know, the last time I was here, it was in 1981, and I sat as a student right here as part of the Tunapuna Hindu School. So it is good to be back at the community center in Tunapuna. Tonight, I begin by asking you a few simple questions. After almost 11 months of this incompetent UNC government, do you feel safer? Let me hear you. Do you feel safer? After almost 11 months of this incompetent UNC government, do you think your economy is growing? Vishnu, do you think the economy is growing? After almost 11 months of this wicked and incompetent UNC government, do you think our sweet Trinidad and Tobago is heading in the right direction? And a question for Tunapuna. After 11 months of this UNC government, can anybody here understand a single thing that Roger Alexander says? My brothers and sisters, as I travel all across our beautiful country, the question is the same, and I hear the same thing. Everywhere I go, people are asking me, Larry, what is really going on with these people? And you know what I tell them? I tell them, last year the PNM warned you. We said the alternative to the PNM is chaos and confusion. And so said, so done. We warned the people of this country that the UNC had no plan. We warned the country that if they got back in government, they would crash straight into office and start breaking up everything. But tonight, I want to give Kamla Prasad Bisasa a little credit, because I honestly thought that it would have taken her about 1.5 years of an incompetent crew of confusion, chaos, and comedy to collapse under the weight of their own incompetence. You like the alliteration there, right? Plenty C's in the cabinet. And take your minds out of the gutter. I mean clowns, nothing else. I am laughing. But she proved me wrong. She has managed to start destroying her government in less than a year. And the truth is that even UNC supporters are beginning to say quietly what we have been saying loudly from the beginning. They're saying, Larry, Ole was right. The UNC government is a bloody waste of time. Almost 11 months in office, they have accomplished nothing of substance. They have no vision, they have no strategy. They have no serious plan to deal with crime. Before the election, all we keep hearing from the UNC, all we kept hearing was stand your ground. You all remember that? That was the answer to crime. That was their grand solution. That was supposed to stop home invasions and make people feel safer in their homes. But the PNM warned them. We warned them that they were rushing through bad legislation in the parliament. We warned them that they were misleading the public. We warned them that they were passing a flashy law that was not a solution to the crime in this country. But the UNC didn't listen. They passed their law, they beat their chests, they posed for headlines, and they wanted the country to believe that home invasions was finished. But let us look at the facts. Stand your ground laws were passed in this country in December, less than 4 months ago. And so far, after the passage of that law, we have had home invasions every month, consistently. Because if this was their big solution to crime, it has failed. Let us look at the record. December 1st, Siparia, a man beaten and robbed in a home invasion. December 11th, and all these are headlines you could go back and check. December 11th, Barataria, a businessman and his brother ambushed in a home invasion. December 23rd, Mason Hall, Tobago, a scrap dealer chopped and robbed at home. Also in December in Philippines, a woman robbed in a home invasion. January 3rd, Port of Spain, an 80-year-old pensioner robbed in his apartment. January 11th, Princestown, a man critically injured after being chopped during a home invasion. And I could go on and on. Up to today, Ian Allen is reporting another home invasion in Chaguanas. I'm sure most of you saw it. This stand your ground law did not stand its ground. This stand your ground law, just like the UNC, fall down immediately, almost immediately on the job. And what does it say about the government? And what do they have to say? The Prime Minister is hiding from the media. And Roger Alexander, he's talking plenty but saying nothing. Almost every time he opens his mouth, the country has to think again and consider, what did he really say? And imagine the Prime Minister has the goal to question the competence and qualifications of our PNM colleagues in the Parliament, but yet sits in the cabinet with Roger Alexander, with somebody like Roger Alexander. And he's not the only clown in the cabinet, but he's so spectacularly a clown that he could represent the entire UNC government. And now, after all the boasting, after all the grandstanding, after all the empty talk, what has this government come to Parliament with? A state of emergency. Not because they have a plan, not because they are in control, but because they have failed. The state of emergency is not a sign of strength. It is a sign of panic. It is a sign of confusion. It is proof that the UNC's crime policy has collapsed under the weight of its own emptiness. They sold the country's stand your ground as the answer. Now they come back with emergency powers because even they know their answer was nonsense. So what is this state of emergency really? It is not a state of emergency, ladies and gentlemen. It is a state of excuses. That's what Kamala has brought to us. It is proof that the UNC's crime policy cannot serve us as a people. It is an excuse for bad policy. It is an excuse for poor leadership. An excuse for a UNC government that came into office with plenty of arrogance, plenty bacchanal, plenty noise, but absolutely no idea what to do when reality faced them. And what is the worst part of it? When a government truly has a plan, they would clearly explain to the people. They would not hide, they would not mumble. They will not hide behind a perverse Speaker of the House, like we saw today. It does not send confused ministers to freestyle their way through national security. A serious government reassures the nation. This UNC clown show cannot reassure itself, far more for us. But, my brothers and sisters, let us remember something tonight. The People's National Movement was not built in comfort. The PNM was built in struggle. It was built in service. It was built in sacrifice. And it was built in the belief that Trinidad and Tobago is a nation worth fighting for, like we saw from our parliamentarians today. When others bring weakness, we must bring strength. When others bring excuses, the PNM under Penelope Beckles Robinson will bring leadership. . And when others fail Trinidad and Tobago, the PNM will rise again to serve our country. So I say to you tonight, do not be discouraged, do not be distracted, and do not be disheartened. Organize, mobilize, speak to your neighbors, speak to your families, speak to the young people of this country. Carry the message of the PNM into every community, every street, every corner, because this struggle is bigger than us. It is about the future of our beloved country. And when that time comes, as I'm sure it will come very soon, I have every confidence that the people of Trinidad and Tobago will reject confusion, will reject failure, and will reject excuses. That is the United National Congress. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Larry, for those stirring opening comments. I now invite our next panelists to bring some opening remarks and opening comments, and I would like to invite Senator John Bates to bring some opening comments.
Good evening, everyone. Before I commence my opening remarks, I would want to take this time to first acknowledge our political leader and the party's exec and thank them for organizing this town meeting at this time on this very critical issue. I'm also hearing my baby crying, so excuse me if I'm a bit distracted. So I want to acknowledge her as well. Now, I feel comfortable to speak on all our behalf by saying this. As citizens, we want two things. We want to be safe in our homes, yes? But we also want to be free in our country, yes? Now, as a responsible senator, it would be remiss of me to ignore the scourge of crime. It is everywhere. I cannot minimize it. I cannot minimize the seriousness. It is real. I am sure, I feel confident in saying that it has impacted each and every one of us, whether personally or affected someone we know. However, even though we want to address this scourge of crime, the ends used must always be justified. The means to achieve these ends must be inherently justified. Violating our constitutional rights to achieve a reduction in crime, any means used to achieve that must be proportional. It must be proportionate. That is something that must be at the forefront of every activity used by the government or otherwise to address crime. And I think as law-abiding citizens, it's also important for us to understand, and that's where I'll be focusing on today, the socio-economic impact of the SOE. You're hearing it being said all over, if you're a law-abiding citizen, you have nothing to worry about. But if you think about that, is it really true? Let's think about it. I mean, people, we're all aware of the more, prominent aspects of the SOE. We know about the fact that the police can search places and persons with or without a warrant, with or without force. We know that they can arrest you with or without a warrant, with or without force. We've heard about the detention orders. In the last SOE, that was very prominent. We know about bail. No bail, I should say, if you're detained under a detention order. But I wonder if people are aware of section 4.1 of these emergency power regulations. What power it gives to our Commissioner of Police. Under that section of the regulations, our Commissioner of Police is authorized to place conditions on a person's job. He can place conditions on where you live. He can place conditions on who you interact with. So if you think about that, he can make an order declaring that you cannot work a particular place. Have we thought about that? The Commissioner of Police can impose curfews. He can require that someone reports a particular place. So any one of us in here could be put under restriction that we have to check in with a police station various number of times of the week. The police commissioner can make an order prohibiting you from leaving this country under that section. He can order that a person enter a particular place or not enter it at all. The police can stop your vehicle at any time without giving you a reason. Think about what that means practically. Those are restrictions on your movement, your association, your residence, and your daily activities. It can mean delays getting to work. It can mean that you are unable to celebrate with a family member in a particular area. It means more frequent interaction with the police in a community. And we know, even if you're a law-abiding citizen, sometimes interaction with the police is not always a pleasant experience. It's a general change in the rhythm of life. Again, these regulations can also affect how citizens gather and speak. I know that's one that is spoken about a lot already. Statements or actions that authorities consider prejudicial to public safety may constitute an offense. And depending on how the regulations are enforced, certain public gatherings, protests, and political meetings can be restricted. So all those who thought they're waiting on the rest of the 10%, and they was willing to go downtown and march for your 10%, think again. When you think about the detention of individuals, if a detention order is made for you, there's no prior warning, you know. The police ain't getting notice, hey, we coming for you in about 2 hours, you know, put things in place. No. Straight to your door. And what does that mean? That's sudden and unexpected detention. Think about the emotional impact that can have on the families of those who are detained. The children, they go into school and they come back, mommy and daddy not there. Detained. And even though the regulations require that the police give you a succinct explanation of your detention, I had a look at some of these detention orders. And there's not much of an explanation. It just says that your actions are, you know, they are prejudicial to public safety. So even the people who are detained, some of them said they didn't even know why, really and truly why they were detained. In addition to the emotional and psychological impact on the family members of those detained, what about the economic and financial distress and hardship? Some of these people detained, and again, I'm saying some of these people, because I know everybody in here is saying, I am a law-abiding citizen, so it can't happen to me. Some of these individuals are the main breadwinners in their family. When they're scooped up and locked up for the duration of the SOE, which you know is 3 months and it could be extended to another 3 months, so 6 months, how are their family to survive? Especially in these economic times where over 50,000 people have been fired by this government. What are they to do? When you're faced with higher taxes already and higher fines. Another thing I want to also bring to your attention, under these regulations, it says if you are found with somebody who has a particular article in their possession, or a weapon or ammunition, not you, you are associated, you are with someone who has that. You may not even know. You know, you could be detained for that. And what is the fine for breach of these regulations? $100,000 or up to 5 years. Now, we know that is the max. We know that is the max. But as the point, as the max. So the max can be imposed on you. These emergency regulations mean, and the reason why I say they mean is I'm looking at the context, the current context of the imposition of these emergency regulations and this SOE. The demeanor of our Prime Minister and UNC. What I would describe as an escalation in violent language. Even in her her address is in relation to this SOE. She said that she's here to terrorize those who are detained and their family and associates. So as I said, I wouldn't be surprised if there's an escalation in how stringent these regulations are imposed. So think about a community where there's already a strained relationship with the police. There are lots of communities where people are afraid of the police, they distrust the police, they dislike the police. And think about that community where young men and women are now being targeted, restrictions placed on them, curfews, cordons, etc. What does that mean for the experience of those in the community? So in closing, I would want to say that, as we have already said, when you impose an SOE, it must be exercised carefully, proportionately, and when it's a limited time period. It should not be rolling. And an SOE is not a substitute for long-term solutions to crime. Crime reduction, I should say. What we really should be focusing on is intelligence-led policing, faster response times by the police, higher detection and conviction rates, quicker movement from arrest to trials. These are the type of things that would address crime and result in a long-term reduction, not just a temporary reduction during the course of the SOE. We have to look at because they are saying one of the reasons for the calling of this SOE is the increasing gang violence. We have to look at what causes or what influences someone to join a gang. Why are gangs active in this country? So I want to say that the ramifications of the long-term use of a SOE, bringing an SOE over and over and over on persons and communities cannot and should not be ignored. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Janelle John Bates, for bringing a different perspective and introducing us to the socio-economic impact. Lastly, on our panel to bring opening remarks, I would like to invite Deputy Political Leader of the People's National Movement, Mr. Sanjiv Boodhu.
Is this mic on? Yes, thank you very much, Viash. Madam Political Leader, good evening. And permit me to recognize Chairman Marvin Gonzalez and Lady Vice Chairman Ann Gatsby Dolly, members of Parliament, and congratulations on your stellar performance this afternoon in the Parliament. I am particularly excited to get into the panel side of the discussion, but I would just like to encourage each of you to think about a few things as we exchange ideas this evening. What exactly is the purpose of any state of emergency? A state of emergency ought to be implemented to achieve a particular result, whatever that result is announced to be. For example, when there was the pandemic in Trinidad and Tobago, the purpose of the state of emergency was to ensure that as many lives as possible could have been preserved by limiting movement, etc., etc. This state of emergency is declared to be a crime-fighting tool. We've just come out of a very long state of emergency. I would like for you to think about what the results of the last state of emergency was, or were, when we had over or around 200 persons being detained on preventative detention orders, the vast majority of whom were released without charge after the expiration of the SOE. Ask yourself the question, what was achieved by arresting all of these people, detaining them for 3 months, and then letting them out without charging them? That cannot be achieving any stated result. And so, if you ask yourself that question, ask yourself, well, what is the purpose of this state of emergency? Because we all recognize that in Trinidad, the police have a very simple rule. It is to detect, arrest, prosecute successfully, convict, sentence, and rehabilitate the person that's sentenced. That is the criminal justice system there. But we've achieved none of that in the last state of emergency. So I want you to keep at the forefront of your minds, what exactly do we wish to achieve as citizens of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago under this state of emergency. And I would like you to keep at the forefront of your mind the importance of motive. Motive matters. It is important for us to understand as citizens why we are under another state of emergency where our constitutional rights are suspended. So I'll stop there, Vyash. Thank you.
Thank you, Sanjiv. Very informative as usual, and certainly providing the audience here and members of the public with information to really get their minds stirred to ask some questions. So, ladies and gentlemen, just before we get into the interactive segment where you have the opportunity to ask questions to the panel, I want to invite to the podium to bring featured remarks. It is my distinct honor to bring these opening remarks, someone who has had and continues to have a distinguished career in public service and in law, serving our nation with integrity, resilience, and a deep commitment to the people of Trinidad and Tobago. From her early years as an attorney at law to her tenure as a member of parliament, cabinet minister, ambassador, and now leader of the opposition, and the first female political leader of the People's National Movement. She has been a trailblazer, breaking barriers and inspiring generations of women and men alike. As leader of the opposition and political leader of the PNM, she has distinguished herself as a fearless advocate for the people of Trinidad and Tobago, leading the defense of our rights, freedoms, and this country's democratic principles. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me as we heartily welcome the political leader of the People's National Movement, leader of the opposition, member of parliament for Arima, the Honourable Penelope Beckles Robinson.
Thank you very much, Vyash. I almost was tempted to say, look at people. Let me join all the previous speakers in acknowledging the chairman of the party, the Honourable Marvin Gonzalez, my other parliamentary colleagues, senators, members of parliament, of course the chairman of the Tunapuna Regional Corporation, Councillor Josiah Austin, councillors, executive members of the People's National Movement, former ministers. Good night, everyone. I got a good night song like all you're a little hungry. Good night. And that's much better. Okay, thank you very much. As you know, we are in the Lenten season, and our Christian brothers and sisters are celebrating the Lenten season, and our Muslim brothers are, of course, this is their Eid. So we want to acknowledge this very special period. And it's challenging for everyone as we discuss this state of emergency. Now, I'm just going to bring a few remarks. I want to thank the panelists for agreeing to speak on this very, very important topic. But I want to ask you that when you think about your questions later on, to be mindful of a number of things. The 2011 state of emergency, the recently concluded state of emergency, and the one we are going to debate. It is very important to remember 2011 and the recently concluded. And why is it important? It's the same UNC government. Too often we have short memories, and they want you to believe that the PNM doesn't want to support anything. And they are the only ones who have the country's interests at heart. So let me make it abundantly clear. We in Trinidad and Tobago all want safety. We all want to end gun violence. We all want to live without fear. Let's go back to the period 2011 and even 2010 to 2015. Many of you didn't remember the allegation that they wanted to assassinate the Prime Minister then, Kamla Prasad Bisesa. How many of you remember that? How many of you remember that in 2011, they arrested more than 8,000 people? How many of you remember that? You all remember that? And how many of you remember that less than 10% of them were convicted? How many remember that? How many of you remember that the government had to pay millions of dollars for malicious prosecution? How many of you remember that? All you answering me, how many of you remember that? Because it is important to remember that as we discuss this SOE and the one recently concluded. Because as Mr. Boodhu said, you arrested 200 plus people, and Trinidad is a small place. How many of those people were arrested and charged? How many convicted? Do you recall that when they came to you in the public and frightened everybody about how many ministers, judges, some kind of equipment from somewhere, and all of us, a lot of us, I would say, get worried and frightened and say, all right, let me give them a little chance this time. But then when you listen to the data, because they have to tell you how many warrants did they issue, how many tribunal hearings did they have. But they come again to tell you, just like when they did the traffic fines, you're busy sleeping, and all of a sudden, you wake up in the morning, just as how they increase all the traffic fines is a next state of emergency, because they are telling you that they now have evidence from somewhere, again, a whole set of crimes, a whole set of gangs. Let me just tell you what the commissioner said in January. The commissioner of police stated that the decline in murders and serious crime in 2025 was due to sustained intelligence-driven policing, stronger divisional accountability, and a coordinated national effort, honest, hard-working police work, and not the state of emergency. You hear that? So if they are telling us that the state of emergency was not responsible for the reduction in crime, how come they want it again? Because you have to ask yourself, now we find ourselves with a prime minister who playing the biggest bargain in town. You ever hear about an invisible bargain? Because no press conference, you have not seen her appearing before the media as I am appearing. And we in the opposition have been appearing. But you know, it's easy to hide and say, I'm going to bust your head. You're going to load up the market. You're going to light up. It's easy to say that, kill them violently, and come and explain to the people how you come up with that. But you're only hiding. Like the typical, you know, they are typical Trinidadian. I will cough you down. She wants to bust the head of her own cabinet ministers. Why? Because they in the Hyatt having meeting with somebody who she don't agree. I mean, let us be serious. And then you want to give the impression that we don't want to support. Let me make it abundantly clear. When I took the oath as the first female leader of the opposition of the People's National Movement, I said it then, and I'm going to say it now, that we are willing to work with the government once they bring good legislation. And let me remind you, because I really want you to ask questions, so I'm not going to be too long again. In December 2024, under the administration of Dr. Keith Christopher Rowley, in relation to the state of emergency, this is what the opposition leader at the time said, condemning the state of emergency. The state of emergency is a shameless political gimmick, a band-aid solution in an election year that does nothing to address the root causes of crime. What is their crime plan? None. She further declared that the government was out of ideas and out of time, and accused it of using the emergency powers as propaganda. On the same day, she called the announcement the most insulting act of cowardice and disrespect we have ever witnessed, accusing the Prime Minister of hiding from a violent crime crisis, which the government created. But you know, they're in panic mode, you know. They're in panic mode because they tell you when UNC win, everybody win. And it's not only the adults, it's even the children in school that the Prime Minister wants to expel without due process. Because this is a government that does not believe in due process. Kill them violently. Whether it's Trinidadians, St. Lucians, it matters not. Kill them violently. We in the PNM are concerned about crime. We in the PNM are concerned about gang warfare. We in the PNM understand that the people of Trinidad and Tobago want to be able to walk comfortably. You want to go back to some of the good old days when you could leave your window open. And that is why we are willing to work with the government. But the government is not willing to work with us. You saw what happened today in the parliament. And I have to tell you, last week, Friday, when it was Private Members' Day, and just to tell you what is Private Members' Day. Private Members' Day means when you're in opposition, you could bring a motion to debate in the parliament. Last week, Friday, when it was Private Members' Day, they spoke with the chairman, they spoke with the chief whip. They tell us that the whole world will end if you debate the FATF bill. And we say, okay, well, you debate the FATF bill, and we will take. So in other words, we gave up our Private Members' Day last week to do it this week. And then you see what has happened. You understand, because they like to tell you all that we don't cooperate and we do not support. Lie. We have been willing at all times to work with the government. So here it is that you tell the public that it's a political gimmick, it's a band-aid solution. But I wonder, at that time, ours was a band-aid solution. I wonder what you call this one. Because you know what happened in 2011, you know what happened recently for the one last year, and they come in now, and you know it's always the night. So everything was going good, and somehow, when everybody is sleeping, they just find out some kind of information. So again, they meet in the night, in the dead of the night, just as how you wake up when you think Christmas Day, you want a little punch cream and you want a little black cake and something, but you get traffic fine. Again, you know the state of emergency is going to end, and they tell you that they have all the answers. They tell you they're going to create 50,000 jobs, no jobs. They tell you 100,000 people went in Central to get jobs, and up to now, not even 1,000 people get jobs. They tell you everybody going to win. All the CPEP workers gone home. All the reforestation workers gone home. And if you check yourself good, you and all going home from your jobs, your contract jobs. And I have to say it, because when you discuss a state of emergency, you have to discuss all the social issues as well. You can't pretend that people can't go in the Tunapuna market. You go in the market, people tell you their goods rotten. Nobody to buy. Single mothers can't send their children to school, can't buy groceries, you can't pay a mortgage, all under this government with their fake and fraudulent budget. So I want to say to you, the people of Trinidad and Tobago, ask yourself, you have a prime minister who went to CARICOM. You ever hear prime ministers go and boast that it have plenty crime in the country? You ever hear that? And let me welcome our Vice Chairman, Senator Amory Brown. Let me say to you that no matter how bad things are, when you go and the world listening, MPs, the world listening to you, you can't talk a little bit about the pan, you can't talk about carnival, chutney, there's nothing good to talk about. That you have to go and celebrate crime and make people feel that Trinidad and Tobago is the worst country in the world, a lawless dump. You must ask yourself, why Kamla Prasad Bisesa want to govern a lawless dump? How can you feel comfortable that that is how she's describing you? I am sure you remember that when they were giving a reason for the last state of emergency, they talked about a minister in a car with police detail. All you remember that? And police people shooting in Trinidad, and they catch nobody. They pelting, and people wondering, because if you're given the data, if you're given the analysis, it must make sense. So let me tell you that I don't intend to go through the 25, and we have our senior councillors and we have our senators, we have our MPs here that are well qualified. Give them a round of applause. So, in closing, let me say to you, we support strong action against crime. We support the protection of our citizens. But fighting crime must never become controlling citizens. I have said to the Prime Minister over and over, Trinidad and Tobago is not a kindergarten school where you want to tell me, behave yourself, behave yourself. I mean, that's how you're talking to your citizens. The citizens, if you remember her speech, I mean, I cannot count how many times she used love. I love you, and I love you. That is how you treat people that you love, people of Trinidad and Tobago. A strong democracy must confront violence without silencing its people. Once freedom of expression is weakened, every other freedom becomes fragile. History teaches this lesson again and again. Rights are most vulnerable during emergencies. Temporary powers can become permanent habits, and broad powers can drift far beyond their original purpose. And that is why the opposition has a constitutional duty to safeguard the balance between security and civil liberty. Holding this public consultation is part of fulfilling that duty and ensuring citizens' voices are never silenced. I want to invite each of you here today to stand, speak, and ask questions that matter to you. This is your opportunity to be heard, to challenge ideas, and to hold leaders accountable. Your presence here is more than attendance. It's an act of citizenship, a commitment to democracy, and a statement that the people will not be silenced. Thank you for being here, for standing for your rights, for standing for Trinidad and Tobago. As your Prime Minister in waiting, I will lead with transparency, accountability, and courage so that together we move forward as a nation. Thank you.
Left and right, just a come, left and right.
Ladies and gentlemen, please give a round of applause again for our Prime Minister in waiting, the Honourable Penelope Beckles Robinson, political leader of the People's National Movement and leader of the opposition, and certainly a very riveting presentation here by the political leader, and really setting the stage for us to commence our conversation with you, the members of the public. So I hope with the opening comments and certainly with that presentation by the leader that we are ready to ask some questions. But just before we move forward, ladies and gentlemen, just a couple housekeeping procedures here. I have an announcement for a vehicle PEC 2347, a red Kia. I understand you are parked outside with all of your windows down. So if it rains, you will be in some trouble. I'm asking everyone to silence their phones as we move forward with this. And I would also like to acknowledge, of course, we have the chairman of the People's National Movement here, the Honourable Marvin Gonzalez, the vice chairman of the People's National Movement, Senator Amory Brown, and certainly our veteran senator and parliamentarian, Honourable Faris Al-Rawi, Senior Counsel. So ladies and gentlemen, as we enter into this interactive segment, let me just quickly go over some of the house rules, just to keep the conversation orderly and organized. So the mic is actually at the podium there by Senator Al-Rawi, right? I don't know if he's guarding the mic there. Yes, he is. So it is to my left, to your right. It's on the podium. I'm asking you not to pick up and move the mic, so you could just lean forward and speak on it. Form an orderly line behind it. We limit one question or comment per person, so we are asking you to really be direct and choose your questions and comments wisely. We are asking you to be direct with as little preambles as possible, or none, so that we could stick to the topic and be very direct. If you could limit your questions to 1 minute, or at least your comments to at least 2 minutes, then we could have more people giving their views and sharing what they have to say. We also would like to say that, persons tend to go through the protocol list, simply stating, I stand on the previously observed protocols, or all protocols observed would be sufficient. And lastly, we ask you kindly, the topic today in this town hall meeting is the state of the emergency, the emergency regulations 2026, and all matters pertaining to it. You would have had a lot of information from our 4 panelists, from the political leaders, so I am sure there will be a lot of questions and comments. So we ask you to stick to the topic. And lastly, I ask you all, please be respectful at all times. If the moderator has to intervene to bring things back on track, I certainly will. So ladies and gentlemen, the floor is open for this interactive session. I am asking you, those with questions, those with comments, please, to my left, there's the podium with the mic. And as you move forward, I'm asking you, just state your name and location. It could be by constituency.
Great evening, everyone. I am from El Dorado. My name is Andre L. Akers. Now, the Judicial Committee of the Privy Council is the highest court for Trinidad and Tobago. And guess what a former justice once said, Lord Sumption? The test of a democracy is not to prevent charlatans from getting to the top. I think the test is whether it enables them to get rid of him once his mistakes are discovered. We can all say emphatically, crime is a problem and everyone wants to see this country return to our paradise once more. But most of us can agree that giving unfettered powers which may last until perpetuity to police officers under the current state of emergency, like restricting our movements, searching our homes, and restricting the dissemination of information, infringes on our fundamental rights inherited long ago from the Magna Carta of 1215 and the Bill of Rights of the United Kingdom of 1689. Why am I so hesitant of giving the police so much powers? One, in 1983, George Chambers commissioned a secret commission of inquiry into Trinidad and Tobago. And that report found that in each police district, they had at least one corrupt police officer. And that is responsible for a whole host of social and economic problems in the east-west corridor, particularly the west of Crep. Two, Lee Mary and NGO via the High Tide Project found between 2015 and 2019 a total of 7,659 cases were dismissed because police officers were not attending court. And finally, the United States Trafficking in Person Report 2022 found a study funded by a foreign organization and conducted by a foreign company reported that 10% of the police force were under active investigation for misconduct and trafficking. And finally, to keep it short, so what is the solution then? My solution is to give the PCA the powers of investigation for police officers for civil matters and criminal matters. And finally, I humbly suggest that we need to take a look at the income and expenditure patterns of police officers, because I am seeing some people working for more money, and I am seeing like they have champagne, they are enjoying a champagne lifestyle. So thank you very much for giving me the opportunity, and I hand back the physical meeting to you. You have a blessed evening.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. I just want to open the floor if there's any comments from members of the panel based on, okay? So, additional, yes, sir. Name and constituency.
Good evening. Jovan Roberts from the Malabar Mausika constituency and the Arima Borough Council. Standing on all the protocols that have been observed, my question is, and this is for my education and for those out there who may not know as well, what is the burden of evidence that is placed on whomever is signing the detention order? I believe it's the minister. And who examines if this burden is met? And if it's the tribunal, then have we examined how this process has worked in the last SOE for the persons? Because I do remember one detainee saying he had issues going before the tribunal and he had questions about how fair it was to him. And we should also consider, I'd like to suggest if it wasn't done already, what is the psychological impact on the citizenry of being in a prolonged state of emergency, and how more accepting the citizens may be of the government overstepping or bending rules or abusing powers because it's a state of mind we have been forced into. Thank you.
Thank you. Sanjiv?
May I want to, right, okay. See, Dano switch. Mr. Roberts, thanks for asking that question. Let me get right into it. A preventative detention order is issued by one person, the Minister of Homeland Security. That is Mr. Roger Alexander, the Member of Parliament for Tunapuna. He is not required to form any reasonable suspicion of any criminal act. He is not required to be advised by the police in making his decision. He is not required to be satisfied by any evidence whatsoever. And he is not required to seek the intervention of any judicial authority, such as is required of a police officer who pursues a warrant. All that is required is for the schedule on page 8, which says, the minister may, if satisfied with respect to any person, with a view to preventing him acting in any manner prejudicial to public safety, it is necessary to provide for his preventative detention, make an order directing that he be detained. So that test is, if the minister is satisfied with a view to preventing the person from acting in a manner prejudicial to public safety. So again, I'll repeat. You don't see the word evidence there. You do not hear anything about reasonable suspicion being formed. There is no test other than this strictly subjective test that this particular minister can just satisfy himself that you should be detained without warrant for an indefinite period of time unless you request the intervention of that tribunal. And if I may go first, I don't want to trample upon my co-panelists here, but on the issue of the tribunal, I represented over 30 people during the last SOE. I had several interactions with the tribunal. The tribunal has to request of the minister certain particulars as to why he has detained the person, and the minister has, I believe it is 7 days to provide those particulars. Now I want to read here what these grounds sound like, because I thought this would come up. And I'm going to read from an actual detention order. Take notice that the grounds upon which this detention order is made are as follows. The detainee has been credibly identified as a gang member within the legal definition of the Anti-Gang Act 2021 and is a leader of a faction of and the gang's name is there. Reliable information reveals that he, along with others, plan to imminently carry out certain acts that are illegal. A preventative detention order pursuant to Regulation 14 is necessary to prevent him from acting in a manner prejudicial to public safety. That doesn't say like the way an information is laid when somebody is charged with a crime. It doesn't say that on this day, in this place, at this time, this particular person was found committing or there was a reasonable suspicion that he was about to commit or was conspiring to commit a crime. None of those particulars are there. All you have heard here is that we have information, this man is a member of a gang. I had a client for whom I filed an application for a review of a tribunal who was a Pomarak vendor. Man selling Pomarak, never arrested in his life before, was in his 40s, no criminal record. First time in his life he interacted with a police officer was when he was accused of being a leader of a gang, and a preventative detention order was made for him. He was detained and spent almost 3 months in custody, after which he was released and said, well, go back and sell Pomarak, and sorry about that. Well, not even sorry. So I hope Mr. Roberts that answers the question. I'll leave the remainder of it to Senior Counsel.
Okay, thank you. And as we keep the mic open, just keep in mind we are live on social media, and we do have some questions coming from social media as well, which I will pose to the panel. And in fact, this question goes to Mr. Scotland, Senior Counsel. Does the new state of emergency attempt to enforce the failed Zoso bill that the MP for Tunapuna so passionately advocated for?
The answer to that lies in our analysis of the 2026 bill. as it relates to the 2025-24 bill by the PNM regulations, and it's almost the same. But here is the mischief in this one. This comes on the heels of an attempt, an unsuccessful attempt by this government to introduce zones of special operations. That's the first thing that we must note. And what they have done by the keeping of Section 4, and I want to read Section 4 so that the population understands our concerns, that the Commissioner of Police is hereby authorized to exercise the following powers. A, to prohibit or restrict the possession or use by any person or body of person specified articles. B, to impose on any person any restriction in respect of his employment or business, in respect of his residence, and in respect of his association or communication with other persons. To prohibit persons from being outdoors between such hours as may be specified, except under the authority of a written permit granted by such authority or person as may be specified, and to require any person to notify his movements in such a manner at such times to such authority as may be specified. That seems very sibling to the Zozo regulations, doesn't it? And you must tell, or you must ask yourself the motive behind the reintroduction of this part of the regulations at this time. Is it an attempt to get Zozo-like powers to a commissioner of police at a time when the Zozos was rightly rejected? There's one other aspect that I want to read and raise concern with the people of Trinidad and Tobago. Section 11. No person shall endeavor, whether orally or otherwise, to influence public opinion in a manner likely to be prejudicial to public safety, do any act or have any article in his possession with a view to making or facilitating the making of any such endeavor, notwithstanding any rule of law to the contrary, a police officer may, without a warrant, and with or without the assistance and with the use of force, enter and search any premises, stop and search any vessel, vehicle, or individual, whether in a public place or not. If he suspects any evidence of the commission of the offense against Regulation 8 or 11 is likely to be found on such premises, vessel, vehicle, or individual, and may seize the evidence so found. People of Trinidad and Tobago, we have to be very cautious with this regulation because it does not go towards public order, you know, because the PNM regulations were geared towards the conduct of criminal personnel. This is geared towards communication by people for a government who won an election on social media communication gimmick. And now that they're getting the backlash of the seeds that they sowed in order to win an election, they are now looking to silence you. Here is the fly in the ointment here. You will be so beaten into submission that even if the law doesn't come into place, you will think twice before you criticize this government, you know. You will think twice before you decide, I will go to Woodford Square to express my disappointment at what went on in Parliament this afternoon, where your duly elected opposition was totally banned from being able to debate a bill that was a referendum on the performance of this government. They will beat us into being so gun-shy that people will now become very coy, very partisan, and very, very concerned and cautious before they express one word of dissent against this government. Do you remember how Dr. Rowley was vilified on social media how your certain members in your opposition were pilloried on social media, but we took it on our chests. Now they can't take it on anybody's part. Thank you.
Thank you. Would you like to comment? So, Mr. Lalla, Senior Counsel, would like to comment as well.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a comment as we had a question about the reintroduction of ZOSO. And I think that there's one issue arising out of the ZOSO which shows how disingenuous, how unsympathetic, how uncaring the government really is in relation to the people facing the most hardship in this country and the issue of crime. And it is this. Under the ZOSO bill, under Section 25 of that bill, they were saying, well, look, once we set up a ZOSO, or we name your area as a zone of special operation, we are also hand in hand going to set up a social transformation committee. That social transformation committee will consist or could be made up of a very wide variety of persons. For example, the MP for the area, the chairman of the regional corporation, somebody from the Ministry of Health, Ministry of Education, social welfare. In other words, a committee to look after all the difficulties being faced by persons in certain communities. My concern about that is this. Since the government was elected in April last year, we have never heard about any talk of any such committee. The only time they spoke about such a committee is when they were trying to get people to buy into the ZOSO bill. Right? They were trying to bribe people into buying into the idea of the ZOSO bill. The ZOSO bill having failed, we hear nothing about social transformation committees for our most vulnerable areas of the country. And then you bring back a state of emergency and we're still hearing nothing about social transformation. And we have to all accept that crime is a social problem. There are many difficulties that people face that could be the cause of crime. And until the government does that, addresses those issues, they're not going to solve crime. And with the way they have handled the ZOSO bill, the mention of social transformation committees there, and their failure to ever mention that before or after the failure of the ZOSO bill shows that they really don't give a damn about the people facing the greatest difficulties in this country. And that is the point I wanted to make.
Thank you very much, Larry. I believe we have a question there. Again, sir, name and location.
Pleasant good night. My name is David Tate, Dabadi constituency. I want to find out this, and I want the media to take cognizance of what I have to say. I heard you spoke about detention orders being signed and people could be picked up. Is it there then that this government, through the detention orders, could pick up my members of parliament? Is it through this bill that they could put my political leader under house arrest by saying, I limit the area where you, Ms. Beckles, could walk or whatever? I want you to answer this, and I want the press to listen to the answer.
Senator Bates.
Hello? Passionate question, and the simple answer is, God forbid. But yes, possible. Because as Senator Boodhu would have outlined, it is the Minister of Homeland Security who is signing the detention order. And all he has to be satisfied is that he is putting the person under this preventative detention order because they are acting in a manner prejudicial to public safety. And they put some meager particulars, and that's that. You have to hope for the best. And again, we would have outlined Section 4, all the authority that was given to the Commissioner of Police, which includes the authority to restrict you. Where you go, where you don't go, your job, restrict your job, it says that. So God forbid, but very possible.
Thank you, Senator. And before we move forward, please allow me, ladies and gentlemen in the crowd, to recognize the chairman of the National Youth League of the People's National Movement, Mr. Patrick Phillips, here as well too. Certainly the youth is here listening as well and seeking information. And we have another question.
Right, good afternoon, good evening everyone, all protocols duly observed. Permit me to enter the conversation on this state of emergency order that we saw released. And I want to take you all to Section 4, which outlines the powers enforceable by the Commissioner of Police, Section F, right? Just reading it here, it gives the Commissioner of Police the authority to require any person to quit any place or area or not to visit any place or area, right? Now, this piece seems very interesting, very similar and resembling a restraining order, right? And when you're saying to quit a place, what comes to my mind is essentially you're leaving a job, you're sending your resignation letter, right? So I'm posing this question to the legal minds on the panel, just to outline the scenario that this section could be possibly referring to, and from the view of a prosecution, what does this mean for the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago?
The first point I'd want to make is to go back to the questions posed by Mr. Tate. And Mr. Tate, I think that the answers to your questions are really that's very much possible. And I say no more. To answer your question, sir, the regulation that you have just quoted are similar to those implemented in 2024 by the People's National Movement. But when I began my introduction, I told you all of a very simple, short conversation with the leader of the opposition. And when we distill the comparison is not in the wording, you know, but it's under whose auspices, under whose reign these powers are entrusted. Under People's National Government regime, you can be assured of even-handedness and a lack of vindictiveness. Not at all saying that the Commissioner of Police, whose powers those regulations are vested in, is in any way compromised. But we cannot turn a blind eye to the fact that these are powers that will be vested in him under a UNC government that has proven since its inception that it cannot be trusted with power. And mind you, relative for prosecution, under the SOE for 3 months, there'll be no need to prosecute. You can just be held without prosecution. And the way how they're going, they may go for another 3 months. So that answer to you.
Thank you. Sanjiv, you wish to comment?
Just want to add one thing, because this particular subsection bothers me as well. And to answer you, sir, on the practical, by way of an example, if you go and stand up outside of the Parliament, outside of Woodford Square, across from the Parliament, next week, Friday, the Commissioner of Police is empowered by this regulation to tell you to leave. That's what it means. And if you don't leave, you could be subject to arrest. So that's what it practically means. Any police officer, while the state of emergency subsists, can direct you to move or leave any public place.
Thank you, Sanjiv. Do we have a question there, sir? Again, name and location.
Mama, I would like to take all the time with me because I have a speech impediment. Mr. Scotland, Miss Penny, right? I would like to say, well, for the election, I took it up on my own and I went against the PNM, right? And I would like to say sorry to the population for pulling on the trigger. I would like to say that. Right? I would like to say that, right? And I come here tonight to reaffirm my support fully 100 to Miss Penny, right? Now, this morning, right, I was outside, right? And 10 jeep came, right? They go in the people's house, the thing. I was outside, they asked me for my phone, right? No, I didn't tell me, I literally hide it. So I tell them, I don't have a phone. Yeah, them, so where's the on social media? I tell them, I say, I get rid of it because all the Muslim people, but I just say that, but as I say, I could be all your voice. I prepare to talk about the ills, and as I say, I'm sorry to each one over there.
Thank you.
Mind you, his name is Kendall Wint. And Wint, I was very disappointed. But now that you have shown, now that you have seen the light, you are now showing the Wint that I knew and grew to appreciate. So welcome home. Welcome home. And maybe I should say to the PNM family, as we say to people, because we were not a perfect government, so as we say to people, forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive you who may have trespassed against us. So when we are good.
Thank you. I believe Mr. Lalla has a comment as well.
I just wanted to make a comment based upon that last question by Mr. Jeremiah, I believe, concerning the power of the police commissioner to ask you to leave a place. And I think it is very important in the context of these regulations and this whole issue about curbing speech that may jeopardize public safety, that we understand something very clearly. A state of emergency, this state of emergency and the regulations that have been passed so far do not and cannot interfere with your right to freedom of expression once it does not involve the issue of threatening public safety. Under the Summary Offences Act, if you want to have a march, even in a state of emergency, you're entitled to apply to the Commissioner of Police for permission to march. If you want to have a public meeting, all you have to do is to write the commissioner and inform him that you're doing so. You don't have to wait for permission. If he seeks to intervene thereafter to stop the meeting for some proper reason, he could do so. But importantly, very recently, within the last month, we had a decision from the Court of Appeal dealing with a protester who stood up outside the Red House during a previous state of emergency. The police came up to him and said, "Sir, you don't have permission to do this, you have to leave." And he filed a constitutional motion and won. The point is, even in a state of emergency, and we must understand this, with all the difficulties we face as citizens in this country, we have our right to freedom of expression. We have our right to protest. Nobody can take that away from us. Once we do it within the prescription of the law. I just wanted to make that point.
Thank you, Mr. Lalla. We have another question again, ma'am. Name and location.
Hi, pleasant good night, everyone. I am Candace St. Edwards, the warrior princess from Sani Grande. yeah, I come back home. All right, so, yeah, based on what is taking place, I didn't vote for that. So my question tonight, can a police officer search or monitor my phone? Because I'm expecting them, trust me. Yes, I know, they will come. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. I don't know if any member of the panel wishes to elaborate a little more on that. Sanjiv?
I don't know whether the online viewers may have heard the answer. The answer is yes, the regulations permit the monitoring of electronic devices. It even goes so far as to describe circumstances under which electronic devices can be detained on a search and subsequently used to retrieve your information from your devices. So yes, now that really brings us to one of the questions I was asking earlier. I invited you to ask yourself earlier, really, what really is the purpose of the state of emergency? Because there are lawful means by which the police may intercept communications. There's an entire piece of legislation for that. And so one has to wonder, why is a state of emergency necessary if the police has reasonable suspicion that your phone contains some criminal information on it? What is the difficulty in gathering information, going to a justice of the peace, swearing on oath that you have evidence that person A's phone has information of a criminal nature that can amount to a charge, getting a warrant and seizing the device? Why is it that we must suspend your rights, dispense with the need to have evidence at all, dispense with the need to say on oath under the penalty of perjury that that evidence is true and correct, or you believe the evidence to be true and correct? These are questions we have to ask ourselves. Why must our rights be suspended? Thanks.
My concern with that regulation is that normally it is beyond a court order that a police officer could come and search and seize items that they say that you may be disseminating that is inimical to the public, prejudicial to public safety. This clearly states without a warrant. So there's no oversight anymore by the court where you will go with an affidavit, you will lay out your evidence, you will convince a judge that we have reasonable cause to suspect, we have a prima facie case. Now it is, warrior princess, Wint, be very careful. And most importantly, here is the issue. Who decides what is prejudicial to the public safety? Who decides that? That is the salient issue that needs to be addressed and needs to be in the mind of the people of Trinidad and Tobago.
Thank you, Mr. Scotland. Yes, I know Senator Al-Rawi wants to make a contribution here as well.
Just to add on the law to Warrior Princess, because her voice is so important as a citizen who has publicly expressed views stridently in favor of democracy, sometimes against us, sometimes against others. I want for a moment here just to acknowledge the strength of Warrior Princess in saying what she has said, and therefore to add something that both members of the panel have just said. It's so bad that under the Interception of Communications Act, sections 8 and 11, in fact, you don't need a warrant at all without a state of emergency to have your communications intercepted. The intelligence agencies can, this is the Commissioner of Police, the head of the SSA, and the Chief of Defense Staff, they can engage in surveillance, intercept your communication without a warrant right now and before under the Interception of Communications Act. And therefore, Mr. Scotland's point is so significant and Mr. Boodhu's point is so significant, because if you had that power in any event, if you have the power under the preliminary inquiries, old law, and now under what we call a JIPA, the Administration of Justice Preliminary Inquiries Act, to seize a phone under a warrant albeit, why, pray tell, would you need it now? So it is in fact a question that brings out how drastically different the approach is right now. But I just want to, in endorsing the point, to point out, is it lost upon us that somebody who put forward a Facebook post in what some people consider to be normal Trinidadian humor, but which you have to be concerned about at times, was in fact detained? Are you forgetting the lady who was detained and locked up for a Facebook post under the last state of emergency? So the question is, are you concerned? But the point that Warrior Princess made is that even without a state of emergency, the Interception of Communication Act allows for surveillance, but you can't use it in evidence until you get a warrant. So be afraid and be very afraid.
Thank you, Senator Al-Rawi. We have another question here.
Good evening, good everybody. Good evening, good evening. My name is Kobe Stanley from the great borough of Point Fortin. And my contribution will be very quite short, but very much important. And of course, I know that you all are speaking about the SOE regulations and the powers, but I want to go to the crime element, because if there is no crime, there's no need for the SOE, right? And Senior Counsel Lalla would have mentioned the social element, and crime indeed is a social problem. And we can't deny the fact that crime involves mostly young people between the ages of 13 even to 35, primarily. And the young people of this country has been under attack by this government. And I say that without fear and contradiction. And if they want to lock them up, well, I invite them too. I know there's some lawyers here will help me go to the court and win some money, right? But I want to say that what is the role of Philip Watts? What is the role of the Ministry of Sport and Youth Affairs? When I was working under Foster Cummings and that ministry, every weekend, every week, every day, we launched programs and initiatives. And had we not done that, I can tell you that many of those young people would have been falling in the depths of crime had we not intervened. And what they did upon office is to cancel, to defund, to victimize, and to, of course, withdraw all of these programs and initiatives. And you go on now on TV to say that the children who behave bad in classrooms, you will expel them. At the first glance, you will expel them. And I'm here today to say that because there are many young people, thousands of them, who can't be here today to speak. And the PM gave me an opportunity to serve at a very young age, and I will stand in the gap for young people today. And I wanted to say that while we continue to advance our interests and to, of course, educate the public, let us remember that crime and criminality and its impact on young people and their involvement cannot be divorced from what a role of a government is, which is to provide opportunities. Because youth need opportunity, not jail. Youth require a chance to progress, not, of course, a statement to be expelled and to be sent to prison and so on. So my statement really and truly is to encourage, well, opposition, we have to encourage and to admonish the government to, of course, get it right and, of course, return to support our young people. And I will just add and say before I go, moderator, that Philip Watts was all up and down the place fighting to get faster work. He get it work now, and like a chicken foot in big man shoes, he can't take space. Let me know.
Thank you, Kobe. Senator John Bates, if you wish to comment. Yes, so Senator
Yes.
Bates, if you would care to comment.
Yes, I just wanted to say I agree with you, Mr. Sandy, from the great borough of Point Fortin. Indeed, one of this government's first actions upon entering the parliament was to dismantle the Ministry of Youth, National Service, Youth and National Service, showing that it has scant regard for the youth of this nation. Under that ministry, there were so many important and useful programs for our youth. We had the Homestead program. We had all the programs that would have allowed them to learn about cosmetology, construction, mechanics, all set. The names are too numerous to mention, all gone. And some of the benefits that these youths were entitled to under the previous administration, they can't even get it today. The land. Some of them are still waiting on the land after going through, seeing the program to the end, the agricultural program. They are now bereft of the land that they were promised. So where are they today? What are they to do? Under the PNM administration, we engaged in numerous activities to address the long-term, to find long-term solutions to crime. As you said, it's a socio-economic thing. It's not about expulsion. I read in January that a lot of the special aids, special education aides who were put in schools to assist students with special needs, their contract ended in August. I don't believe that many of them are hired today. Is that a government who's serious about our youth? They have they disregard the youth who need special assistance, far less for others. So I think, Mr. Stanley, your point is a critical one, and we should take stock of that.
Thank you. And ma'am, just before you present there, please allow me, we are here in Tunapuna, in the constituency of Tunapuna as well, and allow me to recognize the chair of the PNM Tunapuna constituency executive, Ms. Emily Brown, and other members of the Tunapuna executive here. Thank you for hosting us, thank you for having us, and thank you for hosting this successful town hall meeting so far. So ma'am, sorry for that interjection, your name and your location.
Hello, good night, everyone. My name is Glenda Gonzalez. All protocols observed to everyone on the head table, and our opposition leader, Ms. Beckles. Pleasant good night to you too, ma'am. Everyone, good night. I'm going to be the devil's advocate because hard questions will be asked, and we have to be able to answer them. The truth of the matter is the PNM did have a couple SOEs as well. What is the distinct differences between the PNM's SOEs and what we are experiencing here? Now, I'm not saying that there aren't or wouldn't be any distinct differences, but we have to still make it clear to a lot of people who really wouldn't see the difference. There are many people, while we speak at a point or on a certain level, there are many people who will discount what we are saying. So it have to be clear exactly, not from the quotations, not from the little law clauses. They may not understand, they may not care about that. They may not distinctly know, hey, well, this little piece here in that law, it excludes you, or it takes away a particular right, right? So what is the distinct difference between? Next question. Now, the PNM has been in power, and we have done a lot of programs, and the crime has still been a sort of stick in the chest, because we did have crime levels up to 624 in a particular year, murders, that is. And we seem to not be able to get a handle on it. Can we say that our approach to it was a bit soft, because that's another argument, that the PNM was soft on crime. And this clear, hard stance will make a difference. Would it make a difference? Would it not make a difference? Because last year, the Commissioner of Police and all the police stats says that homicide was lower, la 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 la, ba 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 ba. That's what we're hearing. That's what the statistics are saying. Do we really need an SOE? And if we do, because crime is really bad, if we do, is it because it is structured right or wrong? Because all SOEs take away our rights, all, no matter which one. Different degrees, but they do. But what makes the PNM's SOE different? And is it that the PNM had a soft stance and these people are doing a harder stance? That's what I want to find.
Thank you. Senior.
I will answer the first part, and Mr. Lalla and my other colleagues will answer the second part. What is the difference between the People's National Movement imposed emergency from December 2024 and this one now? It's this clarity. You would recall that the justification for the imposition of emergency in December 2024 was an upsurge in violent murders that occurred over a 72-hour period, culminating in a murder outside Besson Street Police Station on a Friday afternoon. And it was intelligence-led information that there would be reprisals coming from that spate of murders that amounted to about 7 in 72 hours. Based on that information, credible, actual information, things that actually happened, the state of emergency was instituted, the People's National Movement government, on December 30th, 2024. Up to now, they have not discovered the rocket launcher that was supposed to be used to attack one of the government buildings. Trinidad and Tobago is a small place. You've locked down the priority offenders. How come you have not recovered one of the rock? Do you remember that was one of the bases for the declaration of the first state of emergency under this government? A rocket launcher. A rocket launcher is not something that disappears just so into thin air, you know. It's one of those things when you watch Rambo movies, you see it. They have not disclosed, they have not discovered it, and they certainly have not presented it to the people of Trinidad and Tobago. What you have is a lot of words. Rise of gang warfare and gang activity. If you had those persons locked down, locked away for over 6 months, during that period, is not enough time to dismantle their operation? What happened to that? In fact, what you have, people, was not any proactive actions on behalf of the government, but just words. And as the political leader pointed out, if the Commissioner of Police ascribed, as he did, and he did, the reduction in crime, not to the state of emergency, but to intelligence-led policing, then why the need for a state of emergency now? So the difference is qualitative. When the People's National Government said that there was a need for a state of emergency, there were 7 murders within 72 hours. When this government said there's a need for a state of emergency, the Commissioner of Police said no, because the state of emergencies that just passed did not contribute to the reduction in crime. It was police work. Well, let the police work continue. The question is then, if the Commissioner of Police is correct, why does this government want to take away your right to say, to move, and to be in this country? That's part one. I leave part
Thank
two to my
you,
colleagues.
Senior Counsel. Mr. Lalla.
Yeah, I don't want to get too deeply philosophical, right? But we, as the people of Trinidad and Tobago, have to understand something. This is our Constitution, and we have to protect the Constitution because it is all we have that holds us together. And the framers of the Constitution never intended the emergency powers contained therein as a crime plan. It was intended exactly for what it says, for emergencies. And if you have a government which has no standards, no decency, deciding that they are going to use the emergency powers in our Constitution as a crime plan, we have to put our foot down and say, no, that is not going to happen. And you see, something very dangerous is happening slowly in our country, and we have to understand it, see it for what it is, and at the appropriate time deal with it. We have an absolute lack of standards applying. We have a situation where you have a man who is on a criminal charge sitting down as both a member of parliament and a minister of government in our country. For the first time ever in the history of the country, you know. We have a prime minister who told the world that the reason why Venezuela had to be invaded was because of narco-trafficking, when the whole world knows that it had nothing to do with narco-trafficking, but something else. The Prime Minister took it upon herself to say that two of our independent senators who are appointed in accordance with our Constitution, were giving up their votes for bribes, for favors. In other words, they were prepared to accept a bribe for their vote in Parliament. And she refuses to identify who those persons are. The point is, there are so many what we consider to be lies, dishonesty, lack of standards, which are taking place under this government, that we must not allow that to pass for what is normal in Trinidad and Tobago. Because the day we accept that as normal and we do nothing about it, crap will smoke we pipe.
Thank you, Mr. Lalla. And as we enter,
Yes.
Senator John Bates.
Yes. I want to join with my colleagues to urge citizens not to be so willing to give up their rights in the name of addressing the crime situation. You have to be mindful of who is in government. And again, I want to emphasize, the question here is not whether we are being hard on crime. The question is, are we being effective? And SOE is not an effective crime reduction plan. And in Jamaica, they tried it. Between 2018 and 2023, they had a series of states of public emergency, as they call it. They call it SOPE. Eventually, someone brought an action in court. Actually, it was the General Secretary of the opposing party, the PNP, sorry. And you know what the court found? The court found that by utilizing an SOPE, as they call it, to address their crime problem as a policing strategy, they were not utilizing the SOPE in the way it was supposed to be utilized. That is for an emergency. And I think we need to take stock of that. Because if the government intends to go on this road by bringing continuous SOEs, I could foresee somebody challenging it. And I could see our courts coming to the same conclusion.
Thank you, Senator. And as we, sorry, Senior.
I have one issue I want to tell you. What is the difference also? The People's National Movement utilized one state of emergency. When it ended in March, we did not come back to Parliament as we would have been entitled to do and ask for an extension. And I want to put on the record, didn't the Minister of Homeland Security say that this carnival was the safest in 20 years? Is that on public record? If we have had such a safe situation, safe cocoon, how come less than 3 weeks after you are saying that mayhem is going to break out and you need to go back to a state of emergency? Think about that.
Thank you, and this is certainly a topic that is engaging the panel, and it's bringing a lot of good information to members of the public. Sanjiv?
Can I add one thing to Larry's comment? The Prime Minister did not stop at accusing independent senators of bribery. She also accused one of her own senators, as she said, a senior government senator, of receiving the solicitation of a bribe, and she has refused to identify in her own government that senator who received the solicitation of a bribe and failed to report it, and failed to report it not only to the police but also to the President of the Senate, and put a halt to the vote that was imminent. That is one. Two, ma'am, to your point, which is rather interesting, one of the things that we have not discussed, and I did have it in my notes, is if this is a harsh approach to crime, two things are to be considered. One, the police, if we take them at their best under the SOE, will conduct surveillance, obtain intelligence, and strike the criminal element based on that intelligence. So they'll gather information and evidence and then conduct a search, make an arrest, issue a detention order. That very same strategy is regular policing. There's just one additional step. Go to a JP anywhere on any corner with that information and say that you believe it to be true on oath, obtain a warrant and conduct the same exercise. That is the only difference. So why do we think that this SOE is being hard on crime if the police have the wherewithal, taking them at their highest, to do the very same thing? But what we are in fact seeing in this and the previous SOE is what I can only label as wildness. And the 2011 SOE was the best example of that, with 8,000 people, as the political leader reminded us, people being arrested. That's just picking up people left, right, and center. And how many of those people were charged with any offense? And of those charged, how many were successfully prosecuted and convicted? So that is really the question on the harshness. And then in exercising what some of us deem to be a hard approach on crime, what is the cost on the taxpayer of a state of emergency? And I mean the financial cost. Because we do not know as yet what the state of emergency, the last state of emergency, cost this country. How much money was paid to the tribunal? How much money is expected to be paid to those detainees that challenged their detention in the court? We know that it was in the millions in 2011. How much state enterprises and or ministries access the emergency procurement provisions because a state of emergency subsisted? For example, if you have a ministry that decides, well, look, because there's a state of emergency, I will attempt to justify to myself an additional amount of expenditure because of the state of emergency. Procurement rules don't apply the same in emergency circumstances. How many times were emergency situations relied upon during last state of emergency for unchecked expenses that were not subject to procurement regulations? Is it 10 million, 20 million, 100 million? We don't know what the state of emergency costs us. Yet we're being told CPEP can't come back, URP can't come back, forestry can't come back, the whole of my DNS can't come back because we can't afford it. So those are the questions I would suggest that we need to ask ourselves. Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you, Sanjiv. And we have two more final questions here before we close off. So I'll ask, sir, name and location.
Good night, everyone. All protocols observed. Good night to the panel. My name is Staron Timothy from the St. Augustine constituency. My question is, if the government had intelligence about gang activity, why were arrests not made before declaring another SOE?
Sure. Any member of the panel?
It's a very good question. It follows, and the government will have to answer that question, because rhetorically, how many persons were charged under the gang legislation coming out of the last 2 states of emergencies? The answer is none. And here is in the ointment. Almost every person who was detained, part of the reason for their detention, they were either a gang leader or the owner of the gang. There were never any gang members, you know. So everybody held, like those gangs only had gang leaders. They had no followers. So the people I represented were all gang leaders. What happened to the gang members? This government really has to get serious about crime, and I keep telling Trinidad and Tobago, our political leader doesn't talk much. You know, when we ended our conversation there, you know what she said? You know, she said, Scotty, you realize that the government's crime fighting plan is SOEs? I was like, wait. It was in my mind all the time, you know. But having it said so starkly brought it home. That was the only plan that this government had to combat serious crime in Trinidad and Tobago.
I just want to add to that to say, I saw a newspaper article after the Zoso bill wasn't passed because it just wasn't sound legislation. They asked our Minister of Homeland Security, well, what will happen next? And he said, well, we will go to our plan B. And here we are today. So I'll leave you to think about that.
Thank you.
Yes.
Sanjiv?
Coming back to the distinction between the 2024 SOE and the 2 last SOEs here. Mr. Scotland just made the point. There was a calculated strategic effort in 2024 into the beginning of 2025 to arrest a particular situation that was communicated to the people of Trinidad and Tobago the very day that the SOE was put in place on the 30th of December 2024. I'm sure you all recall that. It was a very specific, targeted effort by the police. And the leaders of the administration then communicated very clearly, because I remember that there was a need to suspend or to dispense with temporarily the hurdle of obtaining the warrant, because in that exercise is where those who were the subject of the targets of the investigation were escaping lawful custody. So it was a strategic approach. We haven't heard that about either of these 2 SOEs. We are not told, other than, as Mr. Scotland said, what is the rocket, what is it? The bazooka?
Yeah, rocket launcher.
But that was the justification. If you know a man have a rocket launcher and it pointed in a particular direction, oh, you lock up your man yet? Right, that is one. Number 2, as Mr. Scotland also brought it to my mind, how many people, after all the hot and heaviness about the stand your ground legislation, which created the offense of home invasion, does anybody here know, anybody who wished to read in the newspaper, anybody charged with the offense of home invasion? We made the point on every one of our panels for the SYG panel discussions that there was no need for the offense of home invasion. There's larceny, dwelling house, larceny, warehouse break-in, robbery with violence, robbery with aggression, robbery with weapon, possession of fire. You name it, the offenses are there. And I gave the example then. Tell me a time that the police hold a man in your house who is not supposed to be there and tell you, I don't know what to charge him with. There was about a time. That tells you that there was no gap in the law. If you wished to impose a heavier penalty on somebody charged with a known offense, then amend that particular piece of the legislation, increase the fine or increase the jail sentence, as the case might be. But you introduce this whole stand your ground legislation, it's very same way that the Zoso bill was narrated, along with that talk about firearms. Anybody know anybody here who got FUL since election? But all that talk about load up the matic, we giving all the guns, we giving you the stand your ground legislation so you could use the gun. This is on repeat. And after the SOE, we're going to have plan C and then plan D, and nothing is going to change. So I urge each of you, be vigilant, observant, and careful.
Thank you, Sanjiv. Just before we go into our final question, I understand we have thousands of viewers online, and I would like to ask a question that's coming from one of our online viewers. And it's a simple question. Are our military trained to arrest and charge citizens?
The answer to that is no. The military is trained to defend the country in a time of warfare. The police are trained in that regard, and that is why under the Zozo bill, which gave the defense force the powers of the police, that was one of the fundamental objections by the People's National Movement. I want to say that every time we object as an opposition to a bill, we can justify the rationale for our objections.
Thank you.
Well, yeah, just to add one thing. Yes, round of applause. Senior counsel advice for free, eh? Senator Al-Rawi made the point clearly. Again, as it comes to the utilization of the defense force, you don't need a state of emergency to have a joint patrol. At any time, the national security apparatus can decide that for a particular exercise in a particular place for a particular reason, the defense force can join the TTPS and conduct an exercise, save for giving the defense force the right of arrest or the right of search or the right of policing. Leave it to the police. Is it that we have a shortage of policemen? What is the justification for giving the defense force powers of police when you could conduct the same exercise and just ask the police to lock up the man instead? That's all.
More importantly, hasn't joint patrols been a feature of our policing in Trinidad and Tobago for years? This government really not serious about Tate, I don't have court clothes.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Ma'am?
Okay, so pleasant good night to our opposition leader, Ms. Penelope Beckles, to all the members of the opposition, all the members of the PNM, and to everyone that is present at this meeting tonight. My name is Ms. Latoya Gomez. I am a mother of three, and this would be my very first time standing here on any platform, right, to voice my opinion. I needed to stand here tonight, and me standing here, I need to be very transparent. I have been quiet for a very long time, and I think that this now is my time to speak out. So my deceased grandmother was a stunned PNM, and so was my deceased father, Mr. Herbert Scrubson. My father was a man that advocated for the PNM under our former Prime Minister, Mr. Patrick Manning. Excuse me, sorry. But as for me, I am only a citizen of Trinidad and Tobago. They said that the voice of the people is the voice of God. So, I want you all to hear me out. As a citizen of Trinidad and Tobago, I have lost confidence in all governments, the former government and the present government. We'll see this present government, right? So, give me a minute, sorry. Give me a minute. When I look at my country, I see no hope. I see absolutely no hope. What I see is that this country is gloom, right? What I can clearly see are broken promises. People are being, sorry, you'll excuse me, this is my very first time speaking on a public platform.
That's fine. Do you have a question that you would like to ask, or is this a comment?
It is a comment. It's a speech, actually, and I'm going to try to be as fast as possible.
Just,
Okay. our people
Yeah,
are-
so just remember, we're
Yeah.
trying to keep it within a tight time frame. So if you could keep it tight, make a point.
Okay, so as I said before, I see no hope. What I can only see are broken promises, and I think we are the people, we are fed up of broken promises. We want a government that would deliver, that would, keep your promises. We want change. The youth want change. We see no hope, no future for the youth, no future for the citizens of this country. So we are asking, where do we go from here? Where do we go from here? And to Mr. Skid Scotland, I want to say, sir, I applaud you because you made a statement just now where you asked for us to, you said that the PNM government is not a perfect government. And then you asked for us to forgive you all your trespasses. And that to me is taking accountability. So when I ask, where do we go from here? Maybe that is the change that we need. And to Ms. Beckles, right, being our opposition leader, right, I pray that you go forth with God, that God order your steps into making that change that we need. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ma'am, if we could get two brief questions in, we could get you with it.
Yes.
MP?
Well, the fact that you have come here and says, where do you go from here, and we are happy to have you here. We are very happy to have you here. And we want you to stay here. And for Trinidad and Tobago, we say to you, we are here for you all the time.
Janelle?
I just wanted to say, when I look at this country, I have to disagree with you. I see hope. And you know why I see hope? Because I see you. I see people like you who never ever stood on any platform. But even in the face of a government intent on suppressing us, you are brave. You stood here and you said your truth, and that gives me hope.
Thank you. Thank you, ma'am.
Pleasant good night, everyone. My name is Giselle Bernard, and I am the daughter of this very beloved soil and community of Tunapuna. I just have three questions to the panel of legal minds.
Ma'am, excuse me, sorry, but if you could just, I'm asking at this point in time, if you could limit it to one, pick the most important question you think you have there.
All right. How does this SOE affect businesses, protests, and PNM activities? Thank you.
All right, so I think I dealt with the issue of protest comprehensively earlier. It does not and it cannot take away your individual right to protest. You still have a right to organize a public march once you follow the proper procedure and apply to the Commissioner of Police for permission. And you still have a right to have a public meeting once you write the Commissioner and tell him. As far as business is concerned, well, it affects businesses in a very, very negative way, because the message being sent to the region, the message being sent to the international community, is that this country is a failed state because they're always in state of emergency, right? So it is clear that the government has failed and will continue to fail, and we will have the appropriate time to do something to get rid of our failure.
I wanted to add that it affects businesses in also a very practical way. If the police commissioner has the authority to restrict people from entering an area, and your business is in that area, why your customers coming to patronize? If they can restrict a person from going anywhere, how can your employees come to work? If they can, and it says here clearly, the commissioner can impose on any person any restriction in respect of his employment or business. That is very broad. Any restriction in relation to his employment or business. So we need to look at the practical realities of this SOE.
Thank you. Sanjiv?
I'm glad Senator John Bates said that. Candace, case in point, Sandy Grande. Sandy Grande is partially closed down. Days now. The main road is one way in front of the police station. All sorts of traffic restrictions and not one word from the Member of Parliament, either for Toko Sandy Grande, who is the Minister of Defense, or the MP for Kumoto Manzanilla, and that's the boundary. So the both MPs are responsible for communicating something to the business community. That is the main business district in Sangre Grande. And for days now, nobody know anything. What is happening? Your car drive on the main road. How long now? Not since Sunday? Since Sunday, unexplained. Case in point. We don't know if it's SOE, hearing it is bomb threats, also nobody can tell us.
Thank you.
When a government institutes recurring states of emergencies, it creates a certain atmosphere and a psyche in the country, you know, and we must not underestimate that part of continued states of emergency. And Trinidad and Tobago, we in the People's National Movement want to say to you, do not get numb to the curtailment of your constitutional rights. When Williams went to Marlborough House with Surendra Pillio, so we will not rewrite history, it wasn't Tom Adams. A constitution that was forged from the love. We had a constitution that was forged from the love of liberty, you know, not restriction, not SOEs, not Zozos, and certainly not kill them violently. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Scotland. Do we have a final question? No? Okay, well, ladies and gentlemen, it's certainly been a very long and eventful night, but very informative. Can you give yourselves, members of the public, a very lusty round of applause? You have come out, you have listened, you have shared your concerns, you have asked your questions, and they have certainly been answered, and clarity, I would hope, has been brought by our well-esteemed, well-learned panel of brilliant attorneys. Ladies and gentlemen, can we give a round of applause for our panel? And I must name them again. Mr. Larry Lalla, Senior Counsel, Senator Janelle John Bates. Come on, ladies and gentlemen, they've done well. Mr. Keith Scotland, Senior Counsel, and again, Mr. Sanjiv Boodhu. So, ladies and gentlemen, here in Tunapuna and the thousands who are viewing virtually online, and I'm sure the many thousands and tens of thousands who will see this rebroadcast, hopefully this has been informative to you. And as we move towards closing off, I just want to invite to bring some closing remarks, some brief closing remarks. A member of parliament who I know as a financial professional, who has been a media personality, still continues to share information, facts, and truth on social media, and is a fierce advocate for his constituents and those he represents. Ladies and gentlemen, to bring some brief closing remarks, can we give a round of applause for MP Dominic Romain, Member of Parliament for Malabar Mausika.
Thank you, Viash, Mrs. Penelope Beckles Robinson, political leader, and Mr. Robinson, Chairman of the Tunapuna Piako Regional Corporation, Josiah Austin, my parliamentary colleagues, members of council, ladies and gentlemen, and of course our esteemed panel. Well, I think it's good night. A community center is a center for the community. If I just ate a banana, could you see it? Anybody has a plastic bag I could blow some hot air into? Walls, gates, cameras. That's the solution to crime. Is it any wonder that we're here tonight? When that is the person that we have sitting as the Minister of Homeland Security. When we have a Prime Minister who can refer to independent senators as bootlickers and brown nosers. A Prime Minister who will refer to the head of state as a low-level PNM functionary. And this is the example that she sets for our nation's children. And then now, she's telling us that we need to employ more strict and stringent measures to deal with these students after you told us the solution was to put police officers in schools. You did that. And you said that was the solution. Well, it seemed to have been short-lived. They're saying because we're not seeing videos of fights taking place, that means the problem was solved. But then we have students locking police officers, sleeping police officers in the classrooms. So is it any wonder that we are here, that we are under a state of emergency? The fact of the matter is that this government had no plan, they never had one, and they still don't have one. We know the most popular definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. So what does the government expect to happen at the end of this particular state of emergency? Call our next one. So as my colleague said, at the end of the last one, and when they failed to get the support in the parliament for the Zoso bill, the Minister of Homeland Security told us that they had a plan B, which was supposed to come into effect the 1st of February. Where is plan B? He said it had to be a secret. He couldn't tell us what it was about. Well, like it's still a secret. But that B apparently stood for bogus. Because here we are, under another state of emergency. But they told us when UNC wins. When UNC wins, struggle begins. When UNC wins, oppression begins. When UNC wins, assault on our democracy begins. And when UNC wins, chaos and confusion begins. Our late and our first political leader would have told us that the alternative to the People's National Movement is chaos and confusion. And we are seeing that today. We saw it over the last 10 months. I mean, we knew our UNC government was going to be bad. But this bad so soon? So if the last 10 months is anything to go by, we still have about 4 years and maybe 4 months. You know, we keep hope alive, right? We hope. But we saw what took place today in the parliament, where we, your representatives, sought to bring your issues to the fore, the challenges, the hardships that you all have been enduring for the last 10 months. And this is the second Friday that this motion has been going on. And almost every speaker who spoke for the government sought to dismiss the claims that we have made. As far as they're concerned, nobody is struggling. As far as they are concerned, nobody's going through any hardships. Everything is good. Everybody winning. They said when UNC wins, everybody wins. But what we didn't know was that body wasn't spelled B-O-D-Y, but B-U-D-D-Y. Because all their body is winning. But everybody else isn't. And we, I can tell you, as your PNM representatives, every week we have our constituency office days. And I can tell you as a first-time MP, every week I have people coming to see me, 15 to 20 people. And the majority of them who come to see me are looking for employment. These are people who had jobs up until the 28th of April. Since June, July, they have been out of work. They are frustrated. We have read where persons have taken their own lives. Families have been upended because the parents are unable to provide for their children, to provide the basics that they were able to do so before. And you have a callous government ministers who will tell you that that is not true. That is just make-believe. That the figures the PNM quotes is not true. We didn't fire all of those people. And to make sure that we don't bring those issues to the fore in the parliament, we had the member for Oropuch East who calls himself the lion of Oropuch, more like the kitten of Oropuch, decided to take the coward's way out today and to shut us down. But we will not be deterred. If we can't represent you in the parliament in that way, we will use forums such as these to make sure that we bring the issues to the fore. They accuse us of not caring about you, but I can tell you, we all do. And we made mistakes. We have admitted to those mistakes. And we give you the commitment that we will work very hard to ensure that when you bring us back into government to represent you, that we will do better. Each day is a learning opportunity for us, and we are taking all that we learn on board, and rest assured that the PNM will always stand ready, willing, and able whenever you decide to return us to office. We have a judicious mix of experience and new MPs who look forward to serving you, and we encourage you to continue to come out in your numbers, to take the message, be PNM propagandists. Nothing wrong with that. Because if the UNC can have the propagandists who are spreading false news, we will provide you with the correct information. There is good propaganda and bad propaganda. We will leave them with the bad one, and we will promote the good ones. But we will continue to stand in defense of you, the people, not just for those of you who voted for us, but those of you who didn't. The 102,000 of you who voted for us in 2020 but didn't come out to the polls last year, we will win back your confidence. And we trust that you will be willing to work with us and to help us to cross that finish line. So I just want to thank my colleagues for coming out tonight and for sharing this information. It was both timely and pertinent. I think we learned a lot tonight hearing from these esteemed experts. And it's not only, what we learned tonight is not only UNC have good lawyers. Right? We have a lot on our side here too. And we have honest lawyers on our team. And it would be remiss of me if I didn't say thank you to all of you who have come out tonight and those of you who are viewing online as well. Because without you all, we would have just been talking to ourselves. So you all are very important, and perhaps the most important this evening. To all those who would have contributed to making this evening's proceedings a success, you know yourselves, the members of the camera crew. Irene, where is Irene? Always dependable. Yes? So we say thank you to Irene as well. To those who would have made this space available to us, this community center, to Chairman Austin and to his team as well, thank you for hosting us this evening in this constituency, which we intend to take back in 2030 or before. And the other 8 that we lost as well. All right? But we will do that with you, our foot soldiers. And again, thank you all so much for coming out this evening. And we look forward to seeing you all at all the future meetings that we will have as we continue to hold this government accountable for whatever time they may remain in office. So again, thank you all and enjoy the rest of the evening.
Thank you, everyone. And as we conclude this town hall meeting here in Tunapuna, I thank you all for coming out. And please stay tuned for future events like this. Please do reach home safely and reach home safely to your families. Thank you. This concludes this meeting.